Are the Diamondbacks destined to make a return trip to the World Series? History isn't on their side, but we're going to talk about it right now. Don't go anywhere. We'll have more in 30 seconds. Ski to you all and welcome in to Studio K, presented by our friends at Circle K. My name is Derek Montilla, occasionally known as your mayor of PHNX. This man next to me is still a turncoat. It's your thunderstick, Jesse Friedman. And of course, we are brought to you by our friends here at Bet365. Go download the Bet365 app right now. Choose your offer. Sign up using PHNX 365. Find out why it is never ordinary at Bet365. Of course, welcome into you all. So glad to see you guys here for a 1 p.m. show. I know there's no baseball today. We get a rare break. I think we have one more off day between now and the end of the season. And as we were getting ready to fill out our schedule for work here, I got a little sad, Jesse. I got a little sad because I realized I was scheduling the last regular season baseball game. And as much as we complain about how long the baseball season is normally, it's sad when here it is wrapping up. But we have a lot more fun to possibly have in the postseason.
Yeah, it is sort of an odd time of year. On one hand, you're kind of gearing up for the playoffs, and I'm telling all of my friends and family members goodbye because, granted, I'm pretty busy during the regular season, but the playoffs last year was a completely different animal, and I basically didn't see anyone but you.
Correct.
For about a month,
Patrick,
which was
Patrick Lyons,
and Patrick Lyons, and Damon, I guess. It was awful. But yeah, there's also this other element of like, whether the Diamondbacks make the playoffs or not, regardless of how far they go, we're getting kind of close to the end of baseball. Yeah. Like, I mean, even if they go all the way back to the World Series as they did a year ago, I mean, you're talking about a month and a half remaining before baseball is over. And that doesn't feel so good, Derek. So we gotta take advantage and soak up every moment here in these final few weeks.
I do have to give credit to my wife when it comes to how I abandon her. Like in general, before the baseball season even starts, my wife likes to basically quote Tyler, the Creator, and Kaliuka's song where she says, "Can I get a kiss and can you make it last forever? I'm about to go to war. And I don't know if I'm going to see you again." And that's what the baseball season feels like. And I'll tell you, that's what the playoffs definitely feel like once we get in the thick of things. There are no vacations planned for these two at all. We don't even know what we can do.
You made that mistake last year.
I made that mistake last year, that's for sure. My anniversary is just going to have to wait, I guess. That's the way that worked. But
your trip was what, like October 10th to 12th or something?
I think so, yeah, because my anniversary is October 10th. Okay. Luckily I found someone that's been with me for as long as my wife can stand to be with me, but that anniversary is going to have to maybe be pushed off again to another month. I'll make it up to you though, because the Diamondbacks seem poised to actually make a run here at the playoffs, and I have to agree. Earlier, somebody in the chat talked about it or said it. If you could scroll back there, Kevin. Oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on over there. All right. Brandon Buckingham says this team is better than last season, so why not back to World Series?
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, that's not you're not wrong, right? When it comes to it, this team is better. This team is better probably in every way, except for the fact that, Merrill and Zach aren't how good they were last year, but they are still showing signs of that. I will say, though, that it's impressive that the Diamondbacks here they have an 82 wins this season, Jesse, and it's still not even close enough to guarantee their trip to the playoffs. In order to get to the postseason, the Diamondbacks' magic number is actually down to 13 right now, which with 16 games left to play isn't great. But I'm sure that'll dwindle down as other teams lose and such. But it's impressive that the Diamondbacks even have a magic number. That means that they are in complete control of their own destiny when it comes to the postseason. But I will say this, when I, in our description and the way that I kind of led off the show, history is definitely not on the Diamondbacks side when it comes to repeating in the World Series, because the National League has not had a lot of repeat offenders when it goes to back-to-back World Series appearances. In fact, we've talked about it a bit over the last 50 years. It's only been 3 teams. The Atlanta Braves did it twice in the early 90s with that powerhouse of a team that they had. And then it's pretty much the Phillies in 08 and 09, and then the Dodgers in 17 and 18. That's it over the last 50 years. It's not to say that it can't be done, because this Diamondbacks team is very good. It's just, it shows how hard it is in baseball for you to just be that dominant franchise that goes back year after year, like some of the teams in the American League have managed to do.
Yeah, and I mean it's even crazier that you think about, all of those teams. There've been a lot of teams that have made World Series in the last 50 years, right, Derek? Yeah, and sure. I guess there's been 50 of them. And
that's the way that works.
That's the way that works. That's my analysis for today. But yeah, just it being so improbable, it is maybe a little bit surprising. You'd think that something like that would be more regular, but it just speaks to the randomness of once you get there, right?
Especially now.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of very, very good baseball teams that have stayed very good for a number of years, and yet it's very hard to form any kind of a dynasty in baseball for that reason. And especially now that you have playoffs expanded as much as they are, there's even more randomness now with 12 teams as opposed to 10, as opposed to 8, as there was, about a decade ago. So it is a very, very difficult thing to do. And that's why, even though this team is better than the team a year ago, I feel very confident saying that. You just never know what happens when you get to October.
I got to give a shout out to Seb Swo. Of course, we always give a shout out to Jagurtha and any of our international fans, but Seb Swo says, cheers from Germany. Any German D-backs fans out there, let's go back to the World Series. Why not us? Embrace the chaos. Yes, I love it. And Gabriel will join you there. You guys maybe should get together in Germany. Gabriel says, I'm going to Germany next month. Where are you from? We're going to make friends here. We're going to link people up, and we're going to have meetups in Germany is what's going to happen. But the Diamondbacks, obviously, pitching is the big concern. Ina says here, Ina's given a lot of great credit, but Ina says bats are on track, snakes are on track. But the pitching, right? Pitching, bullpen, things are getting back on track a bit more. The offense, though, continues to be incredible for this team. When you take a look at the landscape of Major League Baseball right now, the Diamondbacks are one of only 5 teams in Major League Baseball with a run differential above 100, right? And we knew this team had a chance to be good, but we didn't really know that the offense would come alive the way it did this year. And I think we talked about it on last episode. It's not the way that they created offense last year. I mean, there's just this confidence when you watch a Diamondbacks game that there's going to be some inning where 4 home runs are going to be hit and they're going to score 6, and it's going to blow open, right? Or even if they're down, we've seen them come back and have huge innings, late, 9th inning, 8th inning. So this team offensively just feels like they can't be stopped at times.
Yeah, and it makes me think of the pitching side of this team as well, and how, as much as the offense has been so far above the expectations that at least certainly I had coming into the season, like, I would have bought into a top 10 offense. You maybe could have talked me into this being a top 5 offense. Number 1 by like a considerable margin. I don't think that was exactly on my bingo card.
Oh my God. I could only imagine how that conversation between us would have gone if I would have said to you before the season, Jesse, they're going to have the best offense in Major League Baseball. Mark my words. You would have stopped doing this show with me.
I would have probably gone through some of the bad takes you've had in the past and argued that was the worst. He would
have picked up Gabby. He would have definitely picked up on the Gabby home run thing. That deserves to be picked apart.
But yeah, on the flip side, I'm reminded of the fact that the pitching staff has been very far from what we expected this season, right? We looked at this starting rotation as being potentially top 5 going into the year, and the reality based on the numbers is it has been bottom 5. It has been one of the worst starting rotations in the league for a variety of reasons. Obviously, injuries play a role in that. Jordan Montgomery plays a pretty big role in that as well, although he's certainly not the only one. And it makes me think of the D-backs right now sitting with a run differential of plus 102. What if they didn't have one of the 5 worst rotations in baseball, right? What if their bullpen hadn't been honestly pretty mediocre with how things have turned out? Like, this could be a team that is on track to win 100, 105, like have a pretty insane season just based on how good the offense is.
You're not wrong, because literally think about just taking away Paul Sewald's blown saves. Just that. Forget everything else. You could have still Dylan Floro be a disappointment. You could still have some of the bad outings sometimes. You could have Jordan Montgomery be kind of disappointment for both him and the Diamondbacks that he's become. But if you simply have Paul Sewald be the lockdown closer that he was last season, and those games, especially during that stretch, were, like that stretch of July where the Diamondbacks essentially without those blown saves would have won 16, 17, 18 games in a row, it felt like. It just like you said, it completely changes the perspective of the season. And not only that, but one of those games was against the Dodgers. So there's a game that they immediately pick up in this fictitious scenario. And then, there's just
we can get the D-backs a 10-game lead in the NL West without modifying too much history,
absolutely, right? Easily in this imaginary scenario. But they are still only 5 games back from the Dodgers, right? And here we're going to let's take a look at the Major League Baseball standings. But you do factor in just a few more wins, and instead of a 5-game deficit, maybe it's a 2-game deficit right now. Maybe it's even closer than that. So you're right. I just, the other thing you brought up and that you do bring up is the chaotic nature here of essentially everything going on with the playoffs, right? So I feel like you're fairly confident here in a couple scenarios with the Diamondbacks as far as where they're at right now. They have the top wild card. They are the top wild card team at 82-64. The Padres are half a game behind them at 82-65. And then you have the Mets right now in that third position at 80-66. So, again, you want to end up here, right? Or maybe you want to end up as the last team. I don't feel like you want to end up in the middle there playing an away series in San Diego against the Padres. But I also was like, this was the guy last year that thought they were going to get smoked by the Brewers and was like, I'm just happy to be here, right? So it's like, I don't know what to think. And I think that the Diamondbacks can truly beat any given team in any scenario, especially, in these playoff, in this playoff situation, right?
Yeah, and this is going to go down to the wire, right? I don't want to assume that the Diamondbacks are making the playoffs, right? I think after winning 3 straight games in pretty emphatic fashion, it's maybe easy to go there. And they certainly improved their chances a lot. I think FanGraphs has them at 93.3% now to make the postseason. So they're in a really good position after these last few games. But at the end of the day, those teams are all still clustered pretty closely together, right? I think it's 4.5 games separating all 4 of those teams that are vying for those 3 spots right now. So
technically it's 3, right? It's the Braves are 1 game back from the Mets for the final spot, and then the Diamondbacks have a 2-game lead on the final spot. So a 3-game spread, separates those 4 teams. Spread.
Yeah, and that's why, as much as something that Mike Hazen talked about a lot over the offseason was, let's not clinch the day before the last day of the season, right? He really wanted to have a little bit more cushion. And the Diamondbacks, in his defense, this team is dramatically improved. They're on pace for 91 wins now. That would be a 7-win improvement over last season. And yet, because of the nature of this race, even if you do finish with 91 wins and the D-backs continue to play pretty well, right now this team is still looking at clinching, if you just sort of extrapolate out, I don't know, maybe 3-4 days before the end of the season, it's not going to be, 2 weeks in advance and you can start to rest guys and whatnot. I don't think that is really in this team's future.
Here's Elise with her comment. The insanity of this wild card race really makes it feel like we just need to win every game. You talk about my worst take. Your worst take was that they needed to win every game. That was mathematically incorrect, Elise. So I don't know what to tell you, but we're both having some bad takes. I don't mean to attack her for that.
I think you did. It seemed very
it is. I'm fired up right now. But,
I think she knew that would press your button.
She did it on purpose. Yeah, she did it on purpose. But let's take a look again at that MLB standings graphic really fast, because again, it's getting to the point now, the Cubs, they're 5 games back from that final spot. They're fading, but they're still winning a lot of games, and it doesn't feel like they're letting up. They're doing everything they can. They don't control their own destiny. Neither do the Cardinals at this point. And the Braves and Mets have games left against each other. The Braves also have a tough season remaining, whereas the Diamondbacks road here, especially, if like I said yesterday, if they can figure out this Brewers team and maybe, go and take more than half of these games against the Brewers, things look pretty good for the Diamondbacks after that point. But I mean, this is getting to a point where I know the Cubs and the Cardinals don't have very good chances, so it really does feel like it's down to a 4-team race. But I think
the Cubs could win out and they would probably make the playoffs, but I don't even think that's a given. The Cubs basically have to. That's where Elise's original take does come into play. The Cubs have to win basically every single game to have a shot at this. I'm not really factoring them in at this point, but there's still room on the graphic for them, so we'll keep them around.
Gabriel says Dodgers collapse in the final weekend is going to hit like crack. Oof! Wow. Let's not go there, but let's go. Let's go here. Let's take a look at what the playoff bracket would look like if the MLB postseason started today. And yeah, I mean, here we go. You have the Diamondbacks starting the season against San Diego Padres, and at home you have the Mets against the Brewers, which I feel like that's a very, I don't know, like the Mets are just playing really good baseball right now. And despite the fact that every fiber of my being says that the Mets aren't going to come into this postseason and make some noise, I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a team getting hot toward the end of the season at the right time. The Mets are sort of in that position right now, right? They have been very, very good for a while now. And I know yesterday it felt inevitable that the Mets were going to find a way to win, even though they were being no-hit through 8 innings, and they still scored 6 runs in the 9th and wound up winning that game. So, yeah, that's just sort of the Mets right now. Like, you sort of always figure that the Mets are going to win at this point. So, yeah, they've been playing extremely good baseball, and in the playoffs, I could see a scenario where the Mets could make some noise. They have a good offense. Their starting pitching is on paper is not great, but Sean Manaea is like an ace, and Luis Severino is pitching well, and David Peterson. We saw him here pitch really well against the Diamondbacks. He's been really solid. So yeah, maybe that group is able to ride into a nice postseason run.
Baseball is so funny like that. And that's the reason why, again, there's franchises like the Tampa Bay Rays and the Marlins that they don't hang on to anybody. They don't give out big contracts. They just kind of reshuffle their organization every couple of years. It's because like what the Mets are doing this season is insane, considering how much money they spent on this team and the guys that are doing it for that team, right? Like they spent a ton of money, didn't work out, was a colossal failure. They didn't really stop spending, but they didn't go out and make the gigantic splashes that they did last year or the previous year. Yeah. And, you have the Mets now playing really good baseball, and it just goes to show that like it's about that team chemistry and everything coming together the way that the Diamondbacks had that come together last year. And the Diamondbacks are definitely in that same boat right now. That's the reason why we're seeing so many dominant wins and the team is on the run that it's currently on. But I do have to ask, and I mean, this is for you guys in the chat as well. Let's take a look at that playoff bracket one more time. Which path here would you want? Right now, the Diamondbacks there in the lower side of the National League graphic, right? You have to take on the Padres, and then you're destined to meet up with the Phillies. And after that, possibly the Dodgers. You want to go through essentially the 3 toughest teams in the National League? That's a lot. That seems like a tall task. And I mean, if you do that, there's no doubt about how like good this team actually is. Like last year there were some weird things about like, oh, well, they got the Brewers in the first round. They still got the Dodgers and the Phillies after that, right? There should be no doubt that they deserve every bit of credit that the path, but maybe the path could have been a little tiny bit harder. And in this case, that seems to be what they might have to walk through.
Yeah, so Padres at home in the first round, I think you feel okay about that. Would you rather play the Brewers in the first round like a year ago? We're going to talk a little more Brewers later in the show because obviously that's the team the D-backs are playing this weekend. I would probably say yes. I think this Padres team is built pretty well for the postseason because they have a really good offense and their bullpen is just insanity after acquiring Tanner Scott and Jason Adam at the trade deadline. Like they were maybe the last team that really needed to make those kinds of moves, and yet they added basically the 2 best bullpen arms available. I guess maybe AJ Puck would also be in that conversation. He's certainly been pretty good. But yeah, the Padres are a really tough matchup. I don't know if the D-backs are going to be able to escape that. Could the Mets or Braves take over the second spot, the second wild card spot? It's certainly possible.
Especially with the Diamondbacks and Padres playing each other there with the last series of the year. Anything could kind of shift at that point.
Absolutely. I mean, all of these things are subject to change. But yeah, the only way the D-backs get the Brewers in the first round with how things set up now is if they fall to the third wild card spot, which is of course where they were last year. And that is also possible. Doesn't seem likely as of this moment. That's still possible as well. I think what you really want to avoid, in my mind, is playing on the road against specifically the Padres. Like if it were this arrangement, but the D-backs and Padres swap spots. As someone who's covered some games in San Diego over the last couple of years for a regular season game, that place is sort of insane. Not Philly's insane, but sort of in that direction. I can't really imagine what that place would be like for a playoff game. So that's maybe something that you would want to avoid.
And of course, there is, like I said earlier, the entire history going against them. But I think the Diamondbacks, do have a chance. The one factor here is that last year they were kind of playing when they got to the postseason, and I guess with a certain level of ignorance,
Yeah, right.
Like
right.
you've never been there before. You just, sometimes you're not scared of something that you've never faced before. Sometimes you just kind of go in with that young person courage that those kids all have on this team. This year's different, though, because not only do those young players have the experience from last year and know what it takes to win, but you added some experienced guys in Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk that have just been through all of these scenarios, and it feels good. And honestly, even Jordan Montgomery, right? Jordan Montgomery definitely understands what it takes to win. He just did it. He just won a World Series. And I know he struggled. I know he's sucked at times. He himself has talked about how much he has sucked at times. But I will also say that Jordan Montgomery, we know, can pitch. And I think that he can get through this to a point where even he could be a valuable weapon for this team in the postseason. Even if it's, like a blowout loss in a series where he has to come in and give this team that, that ability to, save the bullpen arms for a more important game the next day.
Yeah. I could definitely see a scenario where Montgomery winds up being really helpful for the D-backs in the playoffs. We'll kind of see what that looks like. I guess the other question in terms of playoff matchups, we kind of touched on the first round opponents. What about the next round? If the D-backs do advance past the first round,
right,
it seems very likely that the Dodgers and the Phillies are going to be the two teams getting the bye. They've sort of gained some separation between them and the Brewers. Which of those teams do you think you want? If you have to choose between the Philadelphia Phillies and the LA Dodgers, not for the NLCS, but just for the NLDS, who do you want?
That's a hard question, because obviously,
pick your poison,
I mean, it's honestly, for the next series, I would probably rather the Dodgers. I feel like the Dodgers don't have the pitching, and I feel that the Dodgers will be impacted by the layoff more than the Phillies will. The Phillies are some dogs, and they just have some great pitching. They have like a potential Cy Young winner on their team this year.
Yeah,
they are just a good team, and honestly, like, even with certain losses, they still seem to be able to make up to it for it. Their bullpen is really good. Meanwhile, you got Anthony Banda over here who just broke his hand by hitting something with it. And it's just, in general, it seems like the Dodgers have a lot of injuries, a lot of things they're struggling with. And I don't see like them getting tremendously better. I also think, like I said, I just think they're going to handle the layoff potentially worse than the Phillies. But what do I know? I'm just a chubby guy here that sang Spanish to my coworkers last night.
You did. It was delightful.
But
I think, yeah, for me, I would probably lean toward wanting the Phillies, I think.
Really?
And maybe this is recency bias on my part, given that the Dodgers just took 3 out of 4 at Chase Field in pretty dominant fashion, and then
Diamondbacks played really well against the Phillies.
And then the Diamondbacks took 3 out of 4 against the Phillies and looked really, really good in that series. So the Dodgers lineup at full health. I mean, I know the D-backs found a way to shut down Mookie and Freddie in the playoffs last year. It's a little hard for me to imagine those two guys going 1 for 21 again.
Yeah.
And then you add Shohei Ohtani to the equation, who is getting a postseason opportunity. I imagine, we've seen what Ohtani looks like in the regular season for quite a while now. I sort of fear to know what Ohtani in the playoffs looks like if there's maybe an extra gear that he's able to reach. What you're saying about the pitching is very valid, though. The Dodgers pitching is in a very precarious spot right now. Tyler Glasnow is still out with injury. Gavin Stone is now on the IL. Clayton Kershaw is on the IL. Jack Flaherty's been huge for them. I don't know where they would be without Jack Flaherty at this point. That was a really important move for them to make. They also just got Yamamoto back and he looked good in his first start. So there's some questions there in the rotation, but I think the pitching can do just enough. And that lineup is, I mean, the Phillies lineup is good, but the Dodgers lineup, in my mind, with all of the depth that they have now, with Muncy back, with Teoscar Hernandez, that I would want no part of that lineup in the postseason.
That's a good point. I mean, both of these teams are just so good, but Diamondbacks still have to get there, right? That's the important thing. Is we could talk about these roads in the playoffs as much as we want, but Torey Lovullo is reshuffling his starting pitching rotation to try to get them there. And I know that one thing that we've brought up a few times this week, and Torey was asked, and Torey gave us an interesting answer. And of course, this guy's going to come in here with his numbers and his logic and ruin it. But, Torey was asked if he was going to try to reshuffle things to perhaps give Brandon Pfaadt a day off and to perhaps get Zach Gallen or Merrill Kelly some more starts. And Torey sounded down with it. Like, he sounded keen to the idea and like that they've discussed it. This wasn't just something we were bringing up, that they, in fact, he accused us of having a drone in his office or something, some type of recording device, because Jesse and I know ball. But what I will say is Jesse kind of looked at things, and it doesn't seem likely that they could get Zach Gallen or Merrill Kelly extra starts between now and the end of the regular season, even with skipping guys, even with the off days.
Yeah, it is impossible. I mean, unless you're starting these guys on a short rest, which I think there's really no scenario where the D-backs do that. Yeah. So, there's a difference between moving Gallen up for this weekend, which is a move the Diamondbacks made. He is starting on Sunday against the Brewers as opposed to Monday in Colorado. That move, it does obviously shift his schedule for the rest of the season, but it does not give him an extra start. With the way that the schedule lines up the rest of the way, there simply are not enough off days to use those off days to get Zach Gallen or Merrill Kelly an extra start.
I mean, today is an off day, and then they have one more on the 26th, I believe, is an off day. Yeah,
they have one more on the 26th, but starting tomorrow, it's 13 straight games. I think that the move that they made to move both Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly up can still pay dividends and still make sense for them, but it's more about lining things up the way they want at the end of the season and getting the matchups they want between now and then than it is getting an extra start. That's not.
And that's what Torey was talking about when we did ask him about it. He said they were concerned about the matchups.
Right.
It's not just the matchups though. It's the way things would line up for the postseason. With the way that Jesse kind of took a look at things and figured things out.
I wanted to show my spreadsheet on the show, but Derek wouldn't let me.
You guys weren't going to be interested. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's very small.
If you're watching on a phone, you probably wouldn't have been able to see anything.
He used like a 9 font. Like, that's insane to expect to put that up on a screen and watch people watch.
It's not as pretty as when producer
meeting,
Kevin
Jesse.
makes our graphics.
It's not a staff meeting, but he did figure out that in this scenario that they could get Zach Gallen to start on game 1 of the wild card series, and that is definitely the thing you want happening.
Yeah. So, there's a few different ways that this could go. And Torey was very open about that the D-backs have different options based on how these next couple of weeks go, how early they might be able to clinch, how important that Padres series winds up being at the end of the year, which I imagine probably pretty important. So there are different iterations of this. There's not one like, oh, this is clearly the way that the rotation lines up the rest of the way. However, yes, there are some interesting things to note here. With the Diamondbacks making this move, it would technically set up Zach Gallen to pitch on the 25th against the San Francisco Giants. That would be his last start of the season. As things stand right now, if we just have Gallen pitching on 4 days rest every single time. And in that scenario, Gallen would then be able to start a game 1 of the postseason for you. Whereas if the D-backs had left things the way that they were and not moved Gallen up at this point in the schedule, then Gallen would have been scheduled to pitch on the 27th against the Padres. And then the wild card series starts on October 1st. That's not enough rest for Gallen to pitch again. So I think that could be part of the calculus here for the D-backs, is that they want at least the option of pitching Zach Gallen in game 1 of a wild card round. Obviously, it worked out for the D-backs last year, but having Brandon Pfaadt, a rookie who had been through a lot in his rookie season, start game 1 of the postseason for you, that was not in the Diamondbacks' plans. They would have much rather had Zach Gallen probably starting game 1, and maneuvering the schedule in this way allows them to do that.
Well, last year, the Diamondbacks obviously did not intend on Brandon Pfaadt being their starter for the postseason, but they had to pull out all the stops last year just to try to make the postseason. This might be a similar scenario, but I don't think it's obviously as dire as last year, where they needed to try to do everything they could to win and essentially needed some help there at the end in order to get in the playoffs because they couldn't get the job done themselves. So this is exactly what the Diamondbacks are looking for. When Torrey was asked about how he would want the rotation to line up for the Padres series, he just said he wants to play at home in the playoffs. Yeah, that's basically all he was concerned about, is essentially getting that top spot in the wild card, which is the only way they would be at home during the playoffs.
Right, which would suggest that for that Padres series at the end of the year, you want to line up your pitching as well as you possibly can. So maybe that's a scenario where even though the D-backs could start Gallen on the 25th now and set him up for a game 1 in the playoffs, maybe they would rather insert another starter at some point and push Gallen back so that he does start in that Padres series. There's a variety of options that they have here. But I think just no. I guess the other thing I'll say about this too is that there could be a potential downside to having Zach Gallen pitch against the Padres, because if you're really confident you're going to play them in the playoffs,
they don't want to see them twice.
Yeah, 2 days after that series ends, do you really want Zach Gallen pitching against the Padres twice in that short of a span?
Probably not.
So that's the other thing. Even them trying to full throttle for that Padres series, I don't know if that necessarily means that you want Zach Gallen starting in that series. There's a lot of different ways you can think about that.
We have a bunch of nerds in our chat. They
want the spreadsheet.
I am disgusted.
I think the spreadsheet just became diehard only content, which is like my favorite thing ever.
I can't stand this. This is gross. But hey, we'll release the spreadsheets eventually.
There's a market for my nerddom. All right, Derek. It's something you need to understand.
I underestimate you sometimes. I really do. Of course, we thank you guys, whether you want the spreadsheet or not, for being here on the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Of course, we implore you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Sign up for notifications. That way you don't miss whenever our wonderful shows go live. And of course, hit that like button, HTL. We got our guy Kevin on the 1s and 2s today. Damon has the day off, but you can still hold the line for Kevin. You hold the line for me. Jesse, again, very self-confident, doesn't need that kind of instant gratification in life. I need everybody to like me so much. All right. If you're listening on the audio podcasting side, we hope you subscribe on your favorite audio podcasting app as well. Make sure you leave us a review. We always appreciate that feedback. And those 5-star reviews definitely help this little podcast thing that we have here go. I did want to give a shout out, of course, to all of my wonderful coworkers. We kind of talked about it for a second there, but we had a blast last night sending off Saul Bookman and Michaela Perkins at a karaoke bar in Mesa, Arizona. And as much as I never thought I would have that much fun at a karaoke bar, I was wrong. And you haven't lived until you've seen Johnny Venerable sing songs from Disney movies. I'm just saying, you have not lived until you've seen that. Or Craig sing Journey. It's amazing. In the high notes, hitting the high notes.
He did. Yeah. Craig has a wider vocal range than I do. Yeah. We learned that last night for sure.
It was incredible. But I want to say this, and I know, again, this is, I'm going to get mushy. I'm going to get teary-eyed probably, but I also want to address, I know people have asked, what's going on at PHNX? And I'll tell you this. It's a wonderful thing in life. It's called growth, right? And sometimes you have this little garden you put together and you want all your plants to all live in this little garden and grow and be happy together. And sometimes one of those plants that you put in there just becomes a monster, just grows bigger and faster than everything else in there. And sometimes you got to give those plants a little space. Sometimes you got to uproot them, move them somewhere else. Doesn't mean we love our plants any less, but it's wonderful to see the growth that we've had. And that goes back, not just Saul, not just Mac. Of course, we've had Sean DePaz from this show go on to do some wonderful things with All City, as well as our, the person who I said I was literally going to, I was going to lock the doors here and not let anybody leave because they were going to let Emma leave. And of course, that happened. So I just wanted to give a shout out, though, to all of those wonderful people that have worked with us. We miss them so much. Flex, who one day I too hope I can send a message that says, I'm leaving just to go travel and live my life. That's what Flex is doing. But
in your garden analogy, you and I guess, are just sort of the weeds.
Not weeds necessarily. We're like some perennials, that we're very pretty, but we're okay in the garden box now.
Yeah, we still
one day. And yeah, BC says, did Saul get fired? No, I mean, maybe. No, I'm just joking. No,
not
Saul,
as far from that as it could
yeah,
possibly be.
absolutely. Yeah, Saul, in fact, has gone up. He is going to kind of general manage my life still. Like, he's not going anywhere. Saul's just going to be doing some stuff with All City. So everybody's going on to do some wonderful things, and we're going to miss him very much. But we're not going anywhere. At least I'm not. Jesse, he tries to leave me every single day. So like, I just completely, anytime I get a reference for him, I make him sound like the worst employee ever. But of course, we do have some partners to talk about here shortly. When we come back, we will talk about our MLB Power Rankings and so much more. But first, got to check out Empire Today. Empire Today, of course, is the place to go get your flooring. And as I've talked about it, I know when we upgrade things in our home, it can uproot our lives, much like I was talking about earlier, but it's worth it. The end result is amazing. And of course, if you can find a company like Empire Today that is easy, quick, and convenient, will get the job done for you and will minimalize the disruption in your life, that's the company to go with. Not only do they do a wonderful job at installing floors, but they obviously, they've been around in the Valley for a very long time, which is hard to find. And they also have a virtual floor designer right now, which, of course, if you want to, once again, minimalize that disruption in your house, you can go ahead and see what those new floors are going to look like in any space in your home before you even get the process started. Of course, they don't have millions of designs to choose from. They give you the best of what you're looking for so that you don't have to thumb through all of those samples and all of that stuff. They just make it easier on you. They also service their own warranties. So if an issue does arise, you can just call Empire. They will, you don't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number or any of that nonsense. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount when they use promo code PHNX. Restrictions do apply. See empiretoday.com/PHNX for details. And of course, that name once again is Empire Today. That's pretty good. You think Archie would be
It was
okay
good
with
enough
that?
for me, but it definitely was not good enough for Archie.
I'll give it a better shot. One thing I really wish I would have done last night, Jesse, is gone with some Z-Biotics before we started our fun night, because I did have to drink a certain amount in order for the karaoke machine to start going inside of my heart. But of course, if I would have started my next day, I would have, if I would have started with Z-Biotics, I would have felt a lot better this morning. I don't bounce back the next day like I used to. And of course, I know many of you don't either, but thanks to Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink, you can. It is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic, and it was invented by PhD scientists to tackle those rough mornings after drinking. Of course, when you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. Feels a lot like dehydration, but it's not. It's this byproduct that's to blame for your rough day the next day. Pre-alcohols produces an enzyme to break down this byproduct. And all you have to remember to do, like I didn't do last night, which is make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you can feel your best tomorrow. It doesn't matter whether it's a celebration, birthdays, vacations, weddings. We know that stuff kind of pops up, and there's so much going on. Get the most out of your plans. Don't let those hangovers drag you down by stocking up on pre-alcohol now. Go to zbiotics.com/PHNXBacks to get 15% off your first order when you use PHNXBacks at checkout. Pre-alcohol is backed 100% with a money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/PHNXBacks and use that code of PHNXBacks at checkout for 15% off. All right. Well, of course, we do have some MLB Power Rankings to take a look at. We haven't had a chance to do these in a while because we've been very busy with Diamondbacks baseball, but Jesse, let's take a look at what we have for the Power Rankings this week. And I love the picture of Ketel right there. He looks like he is like, yes, top 5. Here we are. But yeah, the Phillies, of course, they're up at the top. They cruised after having some struggles a few weeks ago. They are now at the top, going up from 6 to 5. Of course, what else we got here? I can't see the rankings any longer. Thank you. All right. The Dodgers there in the second spot, the Yankees in third, Diamondbacks at fourth, and rounding out the top 5 there is the San Diego Padres.
Yeah. I mean, D-backs, I think they belong in the top 5. There wasn't really a huge question in my mind here, partially because of how well they've played and partially because some of these other teams have kind of struggled a little bit lately. Including, I mean, the Padres even have taken a step back here. They're just 5-5 in their last 10 games at this point. But yeah, you look at some of these other teams, the Phillies obviously at the top are playing really good baseball. They've won 8 out of their last 10, 14 out of their last 20. They were a pretty clear number 1 for me. One note about the Phillies, I guess, which goes back to our earlier conversation is that Ranger Suarez has not looked quite the same since coming back from the injured list recently. Suarez's velo has been down a bit lately. He gave up 12 hits in his last start to the Tampa Bay Rays. So that's something to just monitor moving forward. Suarez is obviously a really big postseason piece for them.
And yeah, I mean, then you take a look at the bottom half of that. I mean, it's like these are all the teams. This is it. I mean, it pretty much. I know there's 12 teams making it into the playoffs, but
yeah,
these are the ones to really concern ourselves with right now. And I mean, of course, there's some things that could change. There's still some teams in the hunt, and I think the good thing about that is that those teams that are still in the hunt, even if they're not in our top 10. Those teams are playing the teams that the Diamondbacks are squaring off with. So there's some good matchups there, including, like a late, I think it's, I don't know. I think it's somebody matches up with the Royals there for the last.
You're right.
I think it's the Mets maybe, or the Braves.
I think it's the Braves.
Yeah,
the Braves have the Royals.
And when I saw that, I don't know, there was part of me that's like, oh, I don't know why, but the Royals are going to smoke the Braves in that series. I just felt it. But I mean, that's because there's a lot on the line for so many of these teams, and so many of the teams are close to being in the playoff position themselves.
Yeah, we also have the Brewers there at number 6. Of course, the Diamondbacks' next opponent. Milwaukee is, I mean, they've been fairly steady. They're 83 and 62. They're tied with a couple of other teams, the Phillies and the Yankees, with the best run differential in baseball at plus 124. But they've also scuffled a little bit recently. The Brewers lost to the Giants 13-2 yesterday. I believe they lost their 2 series before that. So
4-6 in their last 10.
Yeah, they're 4-6 in their last 10. They've been playing 500 ball over the last 20. So they've come down to earth a little bit. Maybe this is a good time for the D-backs to catch them. The Orioles are another team that has kind of come back down to earth a little bit. They're still number 7 on our list at 83 and 64.
Adley Rutschman's really been struggling. Yeah,
Rutschman hasn't quite been the same. The offense is scoring, but not as many runs as the Diamondbacks, that's for sure. They've actually lost 16 of their last 30. So they've been a below 500 team now for a little over a month. So the Orioles have taken a step back in a way that I didn't really anticipate.
Well, I mean, the Diamondbacks are climbing, Jesse, and we do have Ketel on that graphic. So I think it's time we send Ketel up the mountain. Kevin?
I thought that was Mount 500.
No, we've passed the pinnacle peak of Mount 500. Now it's like, How far can we go, right? That actual game on Price is Right, like if you go too high, it sends the little man over the edge. In baseball, you can't go too high when it comes to how many wins you got. You could stack those all the way to the moon. But yes, I really am glad to see the Diamondbacks up there because I think they deserve it. I think they've been a team that I think sometimes we kind of, I don't know. I want to say like, I feel like the Diamondbacks are a team that's like patted on its head. And it's like, oh, what you guys are doing is cute. The way you made the World Series is cute.
Right,
it's
right.
Like, no, we are dangerous. I don't know if you've seen the shirt, but we're connected and we're dangerous.
Yeah, and a couple of other notes on the Padres real quick. I think they're another good team for us to touch on just because D-backs are obviously very closely connected with them in a number of ways. Fernando Tatis is back. He's homered in each of his last 2 games, made an unbelievable catch, I think it was, the other day against the Mariners. So he's a huge addition to that lineup. It's hard to overstate his impact. David Peralta filled in nicely, but Fernando Tatis can be one of the best players in all of baseball when he's healthy. So that was a big get for them. And then, as I was saying earlier, the Padres bullpen is just so insanely good. So we have them behind the D-backs. Their run differential is 31 runs worse than the Diamondbacks, and they have cooled off a bit lately, as we said. But I still, with Tatis back, I think Yu Darvish is back now as well. That's a really formidable team.
Well, we are going to take a look ahead at that series with the Brewers, not only the probable pitchers, but how the Brewers have been doing this season here shortly. But first, we do got to let you guys know, we appreciate you guys that are diehards. If you're not a diehard yet, make sure to go check out that membership at gophnx.com.
You'll get the spreadsheet. You'll get
access to the spreadsheet. That's that's the very first benefit that you get once you become a diehard. You get access to the Discord lounge where Jesse will in fact share that spreadsheet with you. You also get yourself a piece of merchandise from phnxlocker.com. Of course, that welcome kit, which is always fun to receive. Get access to all our premium written content as well as discounts on all of our events. It was once again so great spending our last takeover with so many of you guys. And not only the people that came to the takeover, but I just wanted to briefly thank everybody that we just kind of ran into at Chase Field. There were a lot of great people. I guess saw my buddy KC that I haven't seen in a long time. Meet me at Jack in the Box. I'll fight you, KC. I also saw Mr. AZ, the CEO of Arizona, was out there, and he had Costco pizza with him. He offered me some. I don't know how he gets this.
He
food.
brought Costco pizza in the ballpark.
I don't know if you've seen his gimmick, but he brings outside food into the ballpark every single day. I might be blowing his spot up here, but I mean, he advertises it, so it's the way it works. But yeah, he has he'll bring Little Miss Barbecue on a nice wooden board and just eat it in his seat. And the man is living his best life, if I'm not lying. But
I guess
great to meet so many
have
guys.
To put it in one of those clear.
The man had a whole box of Costco pizza. It wasn't even a clear thing. He had a pizza box with him. It was an extra large, and I don't know how he got it into Chase Field. Apparently, they don't stop you from bringing in food. I didn't know that. That might be news to you guys. But again, thank you so much to so many of you guys that came out. And again, it was great meeting so many of you that we did meet out there. Of course, if you want to make sports more fun, a great way to do so is with Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. They offer early payouts across all sports, NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB. I found out that the NBA offer is 20 points. Do you know how many times I see a team like the Suns go up by 20 and then still lose in an NBA game? That seems like a pretty good deal, because if they do lose, you win with an instant payout offer. Same thing with baseball. Baseball's early payout offer right now, you're a winner if your team goes up by 5 runs ahead with an instant payout. Parlay and same game parlay selections will be marked as winners. So check out Bet365 right now. New customers can choose between 2 offers when they open an account at Bet365. Use that code of PHNX365 when you sign up. Deposit $10 and choose either between a bet and get offer, where you can place a $5 or more bet and get $150 in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer, where you can place up to a $1,000 bet. And if your qualifying bet loses, you'll receive those funds back in bonus funds. Another fun thing to keep an eye on is our PHNX bets. That's right. At Bet365, you will see curated PHNX 365 bets. So when you see PHNX 365 and you see over 0.5 for Pavin Smith to hit home runs, know that was for you. We're doing that for you guys, for the Pavin Smith fan club out there. But of course, you can download the Bet365 app and use code PHNX365 when you sign up. Choose your offer and find out why it is never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or over and physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, text NEXT STEP to 53342, or visit problemgambling.az.gov. And of course, got to give a shout out to Gila River Resorts and Casinos, because no one does it better. Of course, you can check out any of their 4 Valley locations: Wild Horse Pass, Lone Butte, Viquiva. Do I say that wrong every time? Someone told me I was saying that wrong, and I apologize.
I think you fixed it.
Okay, and Santan Mountain. But
wait, Viquiva is correct,
it Viquiva?
Right?
That's what I've been saying the whole time. You know what? I don't.
I don't know.
Look,
I'm probably the wrong person.
I know, and this chat I can't trust because of their love of spreadsheets and everything that they've proven to me. Their love of PD for mayor, these, I can't trust you guys. But what I can trust is Gila River Resorts and Casinos to provide me with a great time, and of course, you can do the same. You can lounge at any one of their AAA 4-diamond resorts and let relaxation take charge. And of course, do so by the pool. The weather is getting cooler, but that doesn't mean that it's still not pool weather out there. Go get yourself a pina colada and live your best life. You can also check out their 4,500 slots and live table games, as well as the biggest, best sports books in any casinos here in the Valley. So head to Gila River Resorts and Casinos and let them show you what the next level is all about. You do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit play@gila.com for more details. All right. Well, of course, this series with the Brewers, about as big as they come, right? I mean, at this point, I think it's, besides the Padres series at the end of the season, these 7 games that the Diamondbacks have against this Milwaukee Brewers team is the most critical. And since they haven't played them, we have really no idea how they're going to match up with the Brew Crew. The Brewers are 83-62 this season with a plus 124 run differential. They've had a very good year. Not so great lately. Like Jesse said, playing about 500 ball over the last month, 4-6 in their last 10. They're tied for the 14th best starting pitching ERA at 4.02, but their bullpen is incredible. Second best bullpen ERA in baseball at 3.15. They have a team OPS of 733, which is good for 11th, which was higher, for a considerable amount of the season. And then they are at 28 outs above average, which is good for 4th, right there behind the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, this is a good baseball team, and it's a different baseball team than the one the Diamondbacks saw in the postseason last year, right? I guess the most obvious difference is no Corbin Burns. The Brewers made a very big trade over the offseason and got better by trading their ace. I think there's a chance the guys they got back in that deal could pay dividends in the long run, but they're not better because of the return of that trade. They're better because of other things that have gone well for this team. And one of the biggest ones is their offense. That was one of the main talking points going into that postseason series last year, was that the Brewers just don't hit like a lot of other teams that make the postseason do. Last year, Milwaukee had a team OPS plus of 91. So they were a well below average offense last year. Still managed to win over 90 games. This season, you saw there the OPS is 733. The OPS plus is 103. So that's a really big improvement from last year. And the big name to know here is Jackson Chourio, who is a 20-year-old outfielder who struggled early in the season, and since June 2nd is slashing 307, 366, 537. He is one of the best players in baseball, and I think is going to be for a long time. They already extended him. They gave him a big extension before he even played a game for them. And it looks like that's going to age pretty well, Derek, because he has been outstanding. Yeah. And I know the NL Rookie of the Year discourse has all been about Paul Skeens and Jackson Merrill, but Jackson Chourio belongs in that conversation as well. He has been outstanding for these few months.
These freaking kids named Jackson. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's like a big, like kind of a trendy question among the baseball nerds right now is pick your Jackson. Do you want Jackson Holiday, Jackson Chourio, or Jackson Merrill? Which of the three do you think will have the best career? And I have no idea. I'm not sure. Chourio actually might be my pick.
I feel like the Brewers are a criminally underrated franchise because I just always feel like they're good, but they're never considered to be a good team. Like, people don't talk about the Brewers. People don't say that the Brewers are like going to light the playoffs on fire. I think most people doubt that they'll maybe even get out of the first round with the way things are lined up for them. But they're a very good team, and they've kind of always been good, and that's where they remain. They're better this year, like you said. Somehow their rotation with Freddie Peralta, Colin Ray, Tobias Myers, Aaron Savali, and Frankie Montas, and DL Hall, they've somehow found a way. And it's baseball is like this though. Like, I mean, we constantly I don't think stars impact the game of baseball nearly as much as maybe other sports, and I don't think stars like contract really help the teams, considering how crazy it gets when you get from being just like a player that was drafted by a team and you go through those first 5 or 6 years and then you break out and you get into that, big money, area like that teams like the Padres and the Yankees and stuff can afford to pay.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't necessarily know if baseball is one of those games where it makes that much of a difference, right? Corbin Burns has been great for the Orioles, right?
Yeah,
like, it's
really
not
has.
like he got off the team and was bad, or that they got, but it's like overall it feels like they're a better team. They're a more well-rounded team this year, and Diamondbacks have a lot of games left to play against them, like I said. Yeah,
and another name that stands out here is Willy Adames, their shortstop, who was okay last year, but this year has been on a whole other level. He has a 120 OPS plus, 30 home runs, 102 RBI from a shortstop. He is a free agent at the end of the year and is going to make, he might get like more than the Dansby Swanson contract. I mean, you might be looking at $200 million for Willy Adames this offseason. He has been that good this year, and I think projects to be very valuable moving forward. So, going back to your earlier point about the Brewers just kind of always being good, they have made the postseason in 5 of the last 6 years. They are above 500 basically every season, and I am among those who underestimated them this season. I don't think I'm alone in that category, but I picked the Cardinals to win the NL Central, which has not aged particularly well. I'm ashamed, but
I tried to warn you about those Cardinals.
I do think the Brewers, on the flip side, in terms of like their weaknesses, I don't think that their starting pitching is as good as it has been this season. Almost all of their starters have outperformed their peripherals by a pretty wide margin. And some of those things have kind of bounced out in recent days. And I think that's partially why the Brewers haven't been playing as well lately. Colin Ray, maybe at the top of the list there. He gave up 10 runs, something like that, yesterday to the Giants. And he's a guy who's had like a low 3 ERA for most of the season. So, this team is not, it doesn't really have any weaknesses, but if I were to pick something that they are the worst at, I think their starting rotation is a little bit vulnerable in this post-Corbin Burns era.
Well, let's take a look at how that starting rotation lines up with the Diamondbacks in this upcoming series. The Brewers have Freddie Peralta matching up with Eduardo Rodriguez in Game 1, which he flipped with Brandon Pfaadt. Is that right? Brandon Pfaadt was supposed to kind of start Game 1?
Yeah. The Diamondbacks swapped Rodriguez and Pfaadt. And I think the idea there, as we talked about, I think I tweeted out the other day, to get Pfaadt an extra day. I think the D-backs wanted to make that a priority. So, Rodriguez moves up, Pfaadt moves back to get him that extra day. And then, as we said earlier, Zach Gallen moves up to start that Sunday game as opposed to starting on Monday.
And Pfaadt faces off against Tobias Myers there in Game 2 of the series. And then they have Zach Gallen get moved up so that he does pitch in this series. And he faces off with left-handed pitcher DL Hall. Brewers ERA, very good there. Freddie Peralta, 3.81. Tobias Myers, 2.93. And then DL Hall there, 4.01. Diamondbacks saw Peralta in the wild card series last year. Yeah. And they handled him pretty well.
Yeah, wasn't he like perfect in 4 innings and then he just totally unraveled in the 5th or something like that.
Just fell apart.
The D-backs eventually got to him. He is a good pitcher though. As you said, a 3.81 ERA. He's been solid this year. Tobias Myers has been a revelation for them with an ERA under 3.
Sub 3.
But again, this is a guy who, like, his expected ERA, his FIP, all those other numbers are in the low 4s. So I'm not sure I fully buy into Myers being a breakout guy on quite this level. But he's still a good pitcher. He has crazy ride on his 4-seam fastball. So that'll be something to watch on Saturday.
El Gallo 4978 says they suck against left-handed pitching. Let's hope that's the case.
We're talking about the Brewers sucking against left-handed pitching.
He says worse in the league. We'll verify that for you, but of course you might be right. And of course the whole thing here with the Diamondbacks is that this is the main one. I feel like they need to figure out if they can find a way, have a good game plan here against the Brewers and find a way to win both series that they have against them. That would be 5 wins in 7 games. And I mean, 5 wins puts them at 87 with a series against the Rockies still on the schedule and a series against the Giants on the schedule.
One thing with the starters that we haven't addressed is that Ryan Nelson was basically skipped this turn through the rotation, which is a little odd. He pitched on Sunday, of course, against the Astros, and he is not scheduled to pitch this weekend.
Is he going to start against the Rockies?
My guess is that he will start against the Rockies. I don't think he'd pitch the first game of the series because Torrey was asked and confirmed that he wanted to keep Gallen. He wants to keep Gallen and Kelly back to back moving forward, which you can understand going into the playoffs. I'm guessing that Ryan Nelson will pitch on Tuesday against the Rockies, and that's interesting for a variety of reasons. One of them being, did the Diamondbacks reshuffle their rotation in this way to make Ryan Nelson their 3rd starter? Do they want to go into the playoffs with Zach Gallen number 1, Merrill Kelly number 2, and Ryan Nelson number 3? I don't know if that was part of the calculus, but it's a question that I have to ask because it's a little weird that they skipped Ryan Nelson when I know he wasn't great on Sunday against the Astros, but he's been a really good pitcher for this team lately, and they're giving him a whole lot of extra rest here.
What are you doing? What are you doing as manager?
What am I doing as manager?
Is Ryan Nelson your 3rd pitcher in the playoffs?
In the playoffs? That's a good question.
It's hard, right? Because, I mean, I just can't help but think about how good Brandon Pfaadt was last year. And I know Brandon Pfaadt has had a big workload this year. I know that we talked to Torrey about if he thought that Brandon would pitch too much. And it didn't sound like it. He said his velocity hasn't dropped or anything like that, right?
Pretty much similar.
Stuff still looked good, but we'll see. We'll see how things stack up when the playoffs come around.
Yeah, I think it's interesting this year. I haven't looked at the schedule myself, but from people that I very much trust, apparently in the division series this year, if you play a 5-game series, you play all 5 games in the division series, you need 4 starters with how the schedule lines up. Whereas last year, the D-backs were able to get away with 3 starters in that Dodgers series. So obviously they only played 3 games. That was part of it. But even if they had gone to 5 games, the D-backs would not have needed to use a bullpen game in that series. Whereas this year you are going to have to use 4 if the series goes its full length. So even in division series, you might have to pitch both Ryan Nelson and Brandon Pfaadt. But I don't know. It's a really interesting question. Ryan Nelson's pitching a lot better recently. So I would probably lean toward him. And I wonder if that's part of the D-backs thinking here is like, we really believe in him and we want to set him up behind our top two guys. And maybe that's the way it stays throughout the playoffs.
Jagurtha is with it, Jesse.
Okay.
Jagurtha says Ryan Nelson is the most consistent pitcher all season. Not
at
wrong.
least like since June. Yeah. I mean, Ryan Nelson has been the most consistent pitcher on this team by a pretty wide margin in that span.
Gabriel Ferreira wants to Frankenstein him and says big game Brandon for 2 times through the order, then Nasty Nelly to finish it off.
Yeah, that's another option. That's fair. You wanted to like try to tag team them. It might depend on, you don't want to like
tag team.
What?
Sorry, I'm not sure. I'm like, I don't even know if you really know the wrestling reference there, but I got excited. It was a pro wrestling reference.
An inadvertent wrestling reference on my part. My mistake. That's interesting. My guess is you probably would want to avoid that. Especially, I imagine that would put you in a difficult spot for like the next series or the next game or whatever. If you were, or later within that series, if you used both of those guys on the same day, because again, you're going to need 4 starters pretty much throughout this postseason run. Eduardo Rodriguez is another name we should mention here. Like I can't, we're not like dismissing Eduardo Rodriguez as a guy the D-backs might want to use in the playoffs. There's still certainly time for him to turn things around and show that he's deserving of that opportunity.
But they're in a much better position than they were last year when after Brandon fought, you pretty much had bullpen game as your next option, right?
So I don't think we're going to see that.
Let's not forget about that, shall we?
Yeah.
But all right, well, the Diamondbacks, of course, aren't the only ones pushing for the playoffs. Sanderson Ford, of course, is also pushing for the playoffs, and you get the payoffs when it comes to their deals. Like right now, you can get a deal on 24 Ford Bronco Sport Big Bend, just ranked highest in its quality by J.D. Power. And you also can get 0% financing for 36 months with no payments for 90 days on the Ford F-150, Escape, Edge, Explorer, and the Expedition. So go check out Sanderson Ford. They are family owned and operated through 3 generations. They have a wonderful diner on premise. So like if you got to eat lunch while you're there, making a deal happen, you can do so. And they also thrive on a no hassle, no pressure, and no nonsense sales approach. They will get you the vehicle you're looking for and get you the best deal that they can. Right now, the Sanderson Ford Summer Sales Event is here, and they're teaming up with the Boys of Summer for a final playoff payoff sale. Purchase or lease any new Ford, and you will get 4 tickets for your family to see the D-backs push for the playoffs. You'll also get 0% for 36 months OAC from Ford Credit. See dealer for details. And as we say around here, the future is very bright for the Arizona Diamondbacks, so you need to plan accordingly with a good pair of sunglasses right now. Get ready for the postseason with a fire pair of sunglasses. Damon and I are putting together our postseason gear. We bought some new baseball gloves yesterday that we as grown men that don't play baseball absolutely didn't need to purchase. But we're also getting ourselves some new fire sunglasses from our friends at Shady Rays because that is important, and you need to block out the sun to catch those fly balls that we'll just basically be throwing to each other out in the courtyard out here. But I will say Shady Rays is an amazing company, an independent sunglass company that offers a world-class product. Right now, check out their Color Rush lenses. They are amazing. They make everything more bright, more vivid, and they'll help you not only block out the sun, but they'll help you see everything else better. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, you don't have to sweat it at all with Shady Rays. They have the most insane protection plan in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by a lost and broken replacement plan that says if you lose or break your Shady Rays even on day one, they will get you out a brand new pair. So you can also exchange your sunglasses if you don't absolutely love them for a new pair, or return them worry-free within 30 days. No risk at all when you shop over at Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Well, that is all we have. No more spreadsheets for you guys. You don't get any more spreadsheets. That's premium content, like we said. But, of course, we do have another show for you tomorrow, so make sure to join us after Game 1 of that series with the Brewers. We'll have a post-game show for you right here. This man will be at Chase Field. It's at Chase Field, right?
It is at Chase Field.
I don't do a good job of tracking this stuff.
Next week it is Milwaukee. So they're playing 7 games against the Brewers in like a 10-day span.
Yeah.
I think I did that right. Yeah, 10-day span. Great. It's like the Cubs last year where they played 7 games against the Cubs in the month of September. I'm not sure they were quite this close together.
Scheduling needs to be better. Scheduling needs to be better.
It is a little odd.
It's absurd. Yeah. There are definitely scenarios where this could have been scheduled out better. But hey, it makes it exciting, right? This is where we're at. Elizabeth says you're depriving me of spreadsheets. WTF? Well, I mean, You got to pay, is what I'm saying. And I know she's a premium.
She's
member.
a diehard. She'll be okay.
Yeah. Calm down. You'll get your spreadsheets. Oh man. Well, do we even have to do the show? Do we just pop open Excel on here on a screen and we just go crazy with it?
That's my dream, is for us to have a whole show where we just screen share and we're just like scrolling through spreadsheets. It sounds amazing.
You know what? I'll quit. I'll quit this show is what I'm saying. But of course, you still have me here in the meantime. For how long? Who knows? It depends on how much you drive this spreadsheet nonsense. You can follow me on Twitter, though, at cap_caveman with a K. Of course, you can follow Jesse here at Jesse N. Friedman. And our guy, Kevin. Kevin, where are you at on Twitter? We still call it Twitter around here. We don't call it X, by the way.
I'm at Kev Tom Writes, so KEVTHOM Writes, like how you write.
That's right.
On paper.
Follow our new guy. Happy to have him here, of course, and happy to have you guys here. Of course, if you have not subscribed to the channel, do so now. Hit that like button before you go. Most importantly, make sure to follow our account at PHNX_DBacks. But of course, all roads lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Appreciate your time today. Thank you for stopping by. We hope you guys have a wonderful day off. Baseball will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, behave yourselves tonight. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun if you could figure out a way to get Zach Gallen just one more start before the end of the season.
We all silly like the mayor.